Hello, everyone, and welcome to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner, and with me is my esteemed colleague, Mushu.
Damn
said
it.
it very quick. Yeah,
Got me.
exactly.
I was
exactly.
ready.
Yeah, you were going to try and beat me to it. I said it very fast. Mushu. Mushu is with me. Anthony is a bit under the weather as of this recording, which probably won't air for a little while. But we got some things going on. We still got tickets for the conference. If you want to make it to the conference, remember, go to Eventbrite and get your tickets. Second annual Paranormal Roundtable presents second annual Dogman Cryptid Conference. Be a lot of great speakers there. I'm not going to get into a whole spiel about that. And if you only listen to us on the podcast, which I'm assuming a lot of people do, it seems like we have more podcast listeners than we do YouTube people, but we have a very large YouTube following too. And every Friday and Sunday, we do a YouTube show. We have a guest on Fridays, and then Sunday we just talk freely. And we do stories on there like we do on this, and we do all kinds of other stuff. We talk about the news of whatever's going on in the world of cryptid and paranormal, ghosts, alien abduction, whatever you want to call it. The Fortean. We're the Fortean people. So, that being said, you can also go to our Facebook group and join. It's the Paranormal Roundtable Facebook group. And there's a lot of stories and cool stuff people share in there. My wife also has Paranormal Lounge, and she has a Paranormal Prayer group. And, of course, Phil Stern, Chris Clough, and Curtis Turner made PRT fan page. Wolf Turner of PRT fan page. I think Phil Stern is really the one that made it. But, anyway, I'm in a bunch of groups, too. Dogman Werewolf Discussion, Inhumanoids of Barton Nunley. Great author and a good friend of mine. What else? We got the Patreon.
Yep, we have a Patreon, PRT. I'm blanking right now. My bad. It's been basically we have a Patreon that we have, and we have a couple different tiers. We have a $10 tier, a $20 tier, a $30 tier. A $10 tier guarantees that after 3 months of that, you're going to get a swag bag. If you want to skip that and go straight to getting a swag bag immediately, you can join the $20 tier. And if you join the $30 tier, we're going to send you an extra book and a lot of other stuff. It's basically a super swag bag. We're thinking about starting, I'm pretty sure we're going to do it, a $40 tier in which we improve upon our already super swag bag, what we call it, the ultra swag bag.
Yeah, and what that's going to consist of is you get two books. You'll get a shirt or a hoodie and a hat, or possibly whatever we have, that's available. It's just more stuff, basically. It's just a huge deal. And you help us out by supporting the show, and then we reward you, and then you wear our merch, which helps us out even more, and it just goes back and forth. So Josh Turner at PRTpodcast.com, Josh Turner at PRT... I'm messing up too. Josh Turner at PRTpodcast.com. That's the coordinates to get a hold of me. And what Tony was talking about was patreon.com/PRTpodcast. Patreon.com/PRTpodcast. Go ahead and join up. Now, one of the things I wanted to say very quickly before we get started on the stories, Tony has a YouTube account, a Facebook account they recently started. He's also on Instagram. You want to tell him your coordinates?
PRT Mushu. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at PRT Mushu. I usually post about the show and when we're going to go live and stuff like that, so you don't miss out.
Yeah, and then you can get a hold of me on Instagram, Josh Turner 940. That's Josh Turner 940. And also find me on Facebook. But please let me know that you are a fan of the show so I can approve your friend request. Because if you find me on Facebook or Instagram and I don't know you, I'm not going to approve it. So if you don't let me know that you're a fan, because I get people all the time with like, oh, I got a bunch of mutuals with you. Well, that's not enough for me to...
No, your friend base is basically reserved for fans of the show.
Fans of the show, listeners of the show, yeah. You're my fans and I'm fans of my fans. So, folks, here we go. We're going to get started here. I'm excited about this episode. It's been one that we've been collecting stories on for a while. Tony's helped with this too. And we are we've been stoked and we've been wanting to unload this one for a while.
We gave a little bit of like a preview of it on Friday.
Yeah, a few weeks ago.
A while ago, but we're finally putting it all together. And I think you guys, I can tell by the name of the show that it's going to be a pretty fun one.
Well, and that's why you should listen to the live stream too, because we told a couple of these stories on the live stream, and so you're going to get the and if you've heard them on the live stream, I apologize that you have to listen to it again. Oh boy, it sucks. But anyway, this one was interesting because what happened though, the way I got this story was like I was looking at a file that we had back when Armando was with us. And it was in 2019, and he had a file, and on that file, it just had the name of the location or whatever. And I looked into the file, and I was like, what is this? And I found one, just like I found like a couple of other weird, stuff in different files. He had his own investigations that he was doing and he was into, and you actually worked closely.
Yeah, me and Armando, he would pretty much do the interviews, and then he'd come to me and we'd talk over it. And then he would ask me if, he would throw a couple of people to me to interview as well.
Mm-hmm. Or cross-reference them, yeah. He was very thorough. And the thing is, we get so many stories, that it's, you just, they back up. They're backed up, and we have to get them out. And so one of the things that I would like to do tonight is talk about some of these really oddball accounts that I guess they started out kind of as oddball accounts, but going all the way back, still looking through files and finding old stories and then finding new ones that match the threads. It's been fun. This has actually been fun. And it was like kind of on a treasure hunt looking through these and then talking to you and talking to Nelly and Anthony and Scorpion and Dee and Zane and everybody, and which ones we should use and whatever.
You know what it kind of felt like? In those movies where they have like the dartboard and it's just a bunch of red lines going everywhere?
Yeah.
It kind of felt like that when we're doing it, which was kind of fun.
Yeah. And so, but what I present to you tonight, and it's up to you, you make what you want with these stories. We got one out of the Florida area, which was really weird. I mean, and I don't want to say like it's not. I'm sorry, this wasn't Florida. This was Georgia. It was in Georgia. It was in South Georgia, and I don't want to say that it was like a terrifying encounter. Like it's for the people that were involved in it. It was almost like it was more of a curiosity because it happened to two hunters, and what was really interesting was that they didn't. I only talked to the one. I didn't get to actually speak to the other. I just corresponded through email. But they didn't say at any time they felt scared because these entities that were doing what they were doing were more preoccupied with each other. And what started out is they were the initial, I guess there was an initial fear because they saw this creature come up out of the tall grass, and it looked like they were hunting. And it looked like a reptoid type being that kind of brought its head up out of the grass and kind of looked around. And then it stood up on its hind legs. And that was the point where they actually kind of freaked out. And they did have some pretty good weaponry on them. I know what they were carrying for protection and then for, hunting rifles. And I thought, okay, they're fine, one of them, I mean, like he thought about taking a shot at it, but then he was like, what's the point of shooting this thing if you're not going to kill it for food, which I thought was admirable. And the other one was like, dude, let's get out of here. This thing, it was looking in their direction. Well, they see off to the right, about 50 yards away from this creature, they see something come out of the tree line that looked like an upright canid. And those were the actual words that this guy, I'll call him Charlie. Charlie actually, I'll call him Charlie because that's his first name, Charlie. But Charlie, Charles told me, he says, dude, this thing came out of the wood line. And Charlie said, dude, I'm sitting there going like, what is this? And so he tells his friend Art that's with him. And he said, dude, are you seeing this? There's another creature. And then he looks over there through his scope and he says, dude, that's a dang werewolf. He's like, and at that point, they got really freaked out. But this werewolf-looking creature was looking at this reptile-looking being, not at them. Now, where they were at, there was a body of water. And like I said, this is actually on private property. I don't want to give, and we've been over this before, I don't give locations that are private, because if somebody goes out there and gets hurt or something happens, and things are real spooky nowadays, man. It's real easy for people to point the finger and say, that person caused me to do this. I got possessed by the devil because of him. And so then you're basically held, culpable, whatever. So this was on private property, and there was a body of water there. I'd say an extremely large pond. I wouldn't call it a small lake. And not really just a tank. Like a tank is just like a dugout pond here in Texas. We call them a tank of water. But it's just a dugout pond. This thing was a little more than that. But this thing was across that pond, and this creature, whatever it was, the reptile-looking creature, it was about 6.5 foot tall, very broad at the shoulders, and it had a blocky head on it. And the head looked almost like an alligator's. The way they described the snout was very rounded. It was, elongated, but not as long as a gator. You know what I mean?
Flat face, kind of.
Yeah, yeah. And it had a muzzle, a short gator-like mouth. But it looked formidable, and it had very large claws, and it had a big old tail. And so this wolf-like creature, and it looked like what it was doing was watching that creature, and that creature went straight toward the water, never took its eyes off them, and it jumped into the water and began to swim toward them in their direction. But then it stopped and then just kind of like sat there in the middle of the water, not moving, not paying, and it began to be like looking down into the water like it was fishing or something. It lost interest in them. It was not worried about them anymore. This wolf-like creature hesitantly goes up to the edge of the water, gets down on all fours. At this point, it turns its head and looks at them. And they said it was more of a curiosity to them, This. Oh, and by the way, this happened in 1999, folks. So anyway, that's the year. It happened years ago. But this thing, it was a wolf-like creature, and it was down on all fours. And they said that it was drinking water like a dog, like down on all fours, but it had arms like a man, and it was hanging onto the bank. And it said that it looked at them and observed them, and then just kind of kept staring toward the middle of the water. This alligator-like creature disappeared under the water. And then it popped back up, and it was probably only about 12 feet away from this wolf-like creature that at that point began to go backwards up the bank. And I think you've heard this story before.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I think you have. But anyway, this one here was pretty interesting. And so that wolf-like creature backed up and was kind of observing this gator-like creature. And I say like creature because these were humanoid type creatures. These were two-legged beings, and they were distinctly different. But this is, if you're uninitiated and you've never heard my show before, we don't talk about these encounters a lot because there's not a whole lot of them, but they do happen. And I have talked about these on other people's shows too, and we get so many. This one was very intriguing, and I know, Tony, this is not probably shocking you. It's not.
No, I mean,
we've heard this before. But they do clash.
Yeah, and I remember a story you had a while back where dogmen were chasing a couple of lizard men up a tree. So
yeah, well, that actually wasn't that was actually from a But anyway, that's not important. But yeah, exactly. We covered that one too. Those reports though had already been covered by other people. That one in particular, and then there was the one about the Navajo reservation, which people think was a skinwalker. And there was a debate about whether it was a skinwalker chasing a reptilian, and then there was the one on the Superstition Mountains. They go on and on and on. But this encounter was really, really crazy. So this thing goes back down to the water and continues to drink with that reptile-like creature there still in the middle of the water. It had gone further out into the water, so I guess this wolf-like creature felt like it was comfortable enough to go and continue to drink. He was probably extremely thirsty to have,
risk it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm assuming at this point in the story, I was like, that reptilian, probably reptoid. I don't want to say reptilian because it didn't sound like a reptilian you would find like the Hive, like alien type reptilians. It was more like a lizard man, alligator dude. You know what I mean? Like it was
there's definitely a distinct difference, I think.
Yeah, and I think I have a theory about where they come from. We'll get to that in a minute here. But this thing, I think it was apprehensive and there was some trepidation, but eventually it just started drinking the water, and then it sat up on the bank and it observed these two guys, and then it kind of began to walk around the other side of the bank, but it didn't go too far from the water. And then they were observing it, then they lost track of where this reptile-looking thing went. And they were like, oh man, where did the other thing go? So they were just kind of observing this. When this creature began to walk back around the other side of the pond, that reptile-looking thing burst up out of the water and like went at it, but it was like a mock charge. And this, which I would just say a dog man, werewolf, whatever, jumped back a couple feet, but then fell. When it fell over, that's when this reptile-looking thing reached up and grabbed it by its leg with its arm, and they appeared to be pretty evenly matched because the dog man was about 7 foot tall, same width, height, whatever, but the reptilian was about 6.5 foot tall. And they know this because when they ended up in the water together, they were both standing up, and the water was only about waist deep at the point where they were standing up, and it looked like they were both standing straight up, and they began to fight. When this dog man creature was biting this reptilian creature, they were kind of like how dogs throw themselves up and they go round and round, like spinning around. They said it looked like two dogs fighting. But at one point, it appeared that the reptilian-looking creature had grabbed this dog man and had pulled it under the water. Now, obviously, the advantage is going to be with the amphibian. If that creature is an amphibious creature, it's in the water, it's in its element. Now, although we know from reports that dogman / werewolves, they swim, we don't know how good a swimmer this creature is, and the water wasn't that deep. But if it could get it under the water, my betting odds would be on this reptilian, because this amphibian, reptilian, whatever, can probably hold its breath for a lot longer. But we know that dogmen are very agile, and we've heard stories of Rougarou even eating alligators in the swamps of Louisiana, the Lougarou, So it's not a realm of possibility that this thing could, get the upper hand, but at that point it didn't look like it was going to. So it was dragged under the water, and they said that there was nothing but like you could see swirling, swishing, whatever. They're looking at it through their scopes. They moved closer, to where they got within about 60 yards of these things, which is pretty close. And then they were staring at the water and through their scopes, and they were like, where did they go? And then eventually they end up kind of like, it was like the water just kind of threw them up onto the shore right there on their side of the bank of this small lake / pond. And they were struggling, and the reptilian was on top of this creature, and both of them appeared to be bleeding pretty bad. And now there has to be a reason, because two apex predators, if that's what these are, they're not going to just fight. So it had to be a territorial thing with these things. And this dogman werewolf-like creature eventually got a hold of this reptile-type creature and took its snout and put its left hand one way. They said hand, not paws. And then the other hand on the top of its snout and pushed the other way. And it was like it tore its jaws sideways. And they heard this cracking, popping noise. And then it just tossed it over to the side, and it was dead. It looked dead, like it was kicking, like it was dying. And then this werewolf-looking creature just kind of laid there, just on the shore. They said they could see its chest heaving, and he was bleeding, and it just kind of sat up with its legs still straight out in front of it, and its arms at its side, and just kind of was looking around like it was dazed. At that point, they thought that it was prudent that they get the heck out of there. The guy, Charlie, that was telling me the story, said his friend Art cocked his gun back like he was going to shoot it. And he said, don't. And he took his hand. He said, I took my hand and I pushed his gun down. I said, don't do it. And his friend was like, why not? And he goes, dude, after what that thing just went through, I think it deserves to live, he says, maybe I made a mistake. You know, he has a very, you know, Southern drawl. He says, maybe I made a mistake. I don't know. I just felt like I should let it live. You know, I just felt like something told me to let it live. And I said, you know what, Charlie, you made your decision. Your friend abided by it. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, that's it. That's whatever it is, it is. And so that was the end of it. And so I look back on that story when he was telling me that, and I thought about it. I was like, I've heard this before. And I did a story on another show where I covered another person's story on another show where these dogmen killed an alligator that had attacked one of their I guess pack or whatever. But I got a theory about this, and hear me out. You know, I was doing a deep dive in the Middle East. As you know, I've been doing a lot of research on it. And one of the things I was learning about these different beliefs, these ancient beliefs that go way back to the Hebrews and the Arabs from way back. And they say that these creatures that come from the inner earth, that there are, and some of them are animalistic. You know, they have like entire hives of
like more instinctive.
Yeah, they're just like animals. Yeah. They live like, but they're humanoidal. And then they have humanoidal. That's not a word. Somebody pointed that out. I don't care. I like it. I'm going to use it. And then some of these different types of inner earth beings are more human-like. They're more like us. They have like civilizations, like societies. And some of them go way back to ancient aliens that came here, millenniums ago, like even millions of years ago. And so, what if this, place where they were at was just a good place for one of these creatures to come out of the underground and just kind of hang out and swim and eat. And maybe it was an outcast of its own kind, or like people like they'll be a hermit. And maybe that's what this reptilian was doing, and it just claimed that pool, and that dog man, who knows, he may have been one of a pack. And it may have been defending its territory against it because it doesn't want it coming in there and messing up its hunting ground or whatever. Well, here's what I learned about this. The property belonged to a friend of a friend, basically. And they told him all about this story, about this scenario. And the guy, he was surprised. He says, "You mean the werewolf-looking creature killed that reptile thing?" And he said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Man," he's like, "I've been trying to kill that lizard thing for a long time, dude." And that thing, he said that it kind of confirmed what I had said. He said it showed up about 2 or 3 years before. And this is what was told to them by a friend. And the friend was totally in shock. He had no clue that there was that thing out there. And he said, "That's why I told you guys don't get too close to that lake." But they were going to, hunt because that's where the deer are going to go, And he said, "I told you guys don't get too close to it, And if you kill a deer," he goes, "I don't know if my friend, told you, but don't go up to the edge of that lake and try to retrieve it." And they were like, "Oh, that's why." They didn't know at the time what was lurking in that water. And I guess their friend was told.
And he ignored it.
He didn't believe it. He did not believe that there was some reptile monster creature from the Black Lagoon living in that water. And so he was just like, "I don't believe this. This isn't real, And so he's like, and then the guy says, "I hear these weird howls at night, and I've found different animals that look like they've been eaten by something." He goes, "And one day I was out there in the woods hunting." This is the guy who owns the land. And he goes, "And something was stalking me. And when I went back and I looked, I saw, it was the damnedest thing. I saw bipedal wolf tracks." And he goes, and I immediately thought, "Oh, werewolf, And then he was just like, "Nah, it can't be,
Well, you got the crocodile man living in your swamp. I mean, your little pond. I don't see why werewolves would be that far of a belief, especially if you've been trying to hunt this thing for 2 years. Now you start seeing like bipedal.
Well, yeah, actually the bipedal thing, he said that thing showed up in like 97, but he said the bipedal thing was like 2 or 3 years before that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So those things have been out there before, because I believe it said it was in 1994 when he saw the footprints. So it was about 3 years before that thing showed up. One thing he did find on his property, though, was a giant hole. So dead serious, man. So I mean, when and he asked me, not that guy, but through Charlie, he said, "Hey, man, he messaged me one day. He said, do you think that this thing has anything to do with it?" I said, "A giant hole?"
Obviously.
I said, "Absolutely." Well, Charlie's a country guy. He don't know. I mean, he doesn't know this. Well, and if you're listening, Charlie, I'm not calling you a bumpkin. No. I'm saying that we're not calling you a stupid. We're just
obviously
saying
not well versed in the cryptid.
Yeah, he doesn't know what these things are, and it makes him a more credible witness to me.
Yeah.
But, it's not like he's making up some story, but it was incredible when he was telling me this. But I remember that file that it went back to Armando. And I was just like, okay. And then, and when I reached out to this guy, now he had talked to a guy who had listened to the show when he heard me on the other show I was on. And that person got him in touch. And then that's when I threw those reports to y'all. And that one just kind of got lost in the shuffle, but I'm sure Armando and me you heard us talk about it. But I didn't know what happened to it. And I had no way to get in touch with that person to get the details. All I knew is I knew the story, but I didn't know the whole story. And I hadn't talked to anybody about it or corresponded with anybody about it. So, that's really cool that I was able to get that down and actually tell that story. But so we got a bunch of others in front of us here. Which one would you like to hear me tell?
We've gone over them. There are a couple that I'm definitely more interested in, like that confuse me, that are like bizarre to me. But I think after that story, I think another good one would be one of the Rake versus stories.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Yeah. Which one? Let's see. Shoot, man, we got a couple. We've got a few people who actually talked to us face to face about them. What about Daryl's story? I'll tell you that. Not Daryl Denton. He's a different guy. This guy's name is Daryl, and he gave us this one. And this one was crazy. This one happened up in Kirkland, which is it's a suburb of Seattle, right? It's on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a suburb of Seattle, but it was northeast of Seattle. But this one was even further north or further east, of Seattle. And this guy's had two weird encounters. He had one in Vancouver, Washington, and then he had another one. Like I said, this one was really weird. But this one involved, like, he was out in the woods, and I didn't get, because we didn't actually talk on the phone or whatever. I just read the message or whatever, but he typed a pretty detailed story. And one of the things that he said in the story was he was out. I think he was picking mushrooms, if I remember correctly. The one that was the one in Vancouver though, when but he saw an 8-foot tall Sasquatch, as he called it, very large, and he said it smelled terrible and it came out of the woods. And he said that it was two times he's seen it, and they were about 12 years apart. And that one was in 2003. And then the other one was in 2015. The one in 2015, he was out hiking, may have been doing the same thing, I don't know. But he said that he came across what looked like a creature crawling up on a tree. And at first he thought this thing just looked like a giant white lizard. And you know how we'll see them around the house. We'll see them.
Yeah, those little geckos or whatever.
Yeah, but some of them get pretty big, pretty good size. And so there's like kind of a translucent little one that we saw the other day. But it kind of reminded me of this. And he said it was like translucent, had a tail. But it reminded me of a pale crawler. He said he turned its head around backwards and was looking at him. And then it was making a snapping noise with its mouth. The weird thing was that he couldn't distinguish between, it was like an exoskeleton or something. He couldn't distinguish between the face had like jaggedy looking stuff on the top and the bottom, which he assumed were teeth, but he couldn't tell. Like they didn't look like teeth. You know what I mean? It looked like part of his face. Kind of like how a scarecrow, it looks like, what's his name? The
Jeepers Creepers?
No, from Batman. What's his name?
Oh, his scarecrow.
His teeth just look like they're not really, they're just a part of the mask. Yeah. And the way he described it, that's kind of how the impression that I got, the way when I was looking at it in my mind's eye. And he said that he hears this loud, like whooping, like noise, and something came crashing through the brush. And he said that when it did, he hears like the noise coming from whatever it is before it gets to, and this creature was turning its head different ways, like it was trying to hear it. So it begins crawling up the tree. He said just then he sees this large blackish brown arm come around the tree and grab it by what can only be described as one of its appendages. Now he said appendages because he didn't see, like, it looked like a little stubby leg, like a little stubby leg like appendage. The front appendages look like arms on this white creature. He said when it reached around to grab it, this thing's tail was long. You don't get that a lot of times with the rake creatures. You don't hear about that. So I don't know what this is.
That's why it sounded weird to me, because I've never heard of rake with the tail.
Well, I've told the story on the show before, way back in one of the early episodes. I think maybe even in our first season or second season. Do you remember Logan used to work with us?
Yeah.
His wife saw this reptilian looking thing up in Washington, or in Northern California, I believe. I can't remember. But it was crazy. This thing, like its tail, like whipped around and hit what looked like this. All he saw was the arm. And then, because there was all this brush right there, and then he sees this big giant leg come out with this big huge foot, and he knew immediately this was a Sasquatch. And he said it looked not exactly like the one he had seen 12 years before, but he said it was pretty close. It was pretty, not identical, but like it was big, and it was a large male, you could tell. And he said, and it came around the side of that tree, and that thing started letting out this shrieking noise, and it turned and like leapt onto this Sasquatch. And he thought the Sasquatch was like 4 times the size of this thing. He figured it would be an easy fight. This Sasquatch is just going to kill this thing. But he said it wasn't. This thing was crawling all over this Sasquatch. And what was even weirder about it was that it looked like it was burning the Sasquatch. Like there was some sort of like something that was coming off of it, like maybe its skin. He wasn't real sure, but it looked like the Sasquatch was shrieking from pain because there was like this weird, foggy, smoky looking stuff coming off of it whenever it would go to bite it. And he said it was almost like it was spitting venom, but he didn't see it. The spit actually come out of its mouth. He's like, what I read, he said, I didn't see it. But it was definitely attacking this Sasquatch, and it was not doing it in a conventional way. And eventually this Sasquatch reached up and grabbed it by its head and just pulled it and was like pulling it. And eventually this thing, it let go and just kind of like flipped forward. And when it did, its head could spin all the way around like 360 degrees. And then the body turned and curved. And at that point, that's when he realized that this thing's little stubby legs, they jutted out and elongated. And it reached up and it like turned its head inward and it bit the wrist or the area between the, I guess the lower forearm area, like the muscle right there. It tore it like on the Bigfoot. And then when the Bigfoot like shrieked or whatever, it ran and like threw this like just hard punch. You could see it punched it really hard. And this creature just kind of flew and it landed on a smaller tree and just kind of splatted there. And he said, dude, if you take like a fried egg and just threw it, imagine a fried egg flying through the air, just splatting onto a tree. And he said it was just like it elongated itself in every direction.
Maybe like a wet napkin.
Yeah, like splat, and then he said then it just like it blew up like it was not exploded, but like it blew itself up like to kind of wrap around the tree and absorb the blow. And then the head popped back out and it popped its form back out. And then it just took off up the tree, and the Sasquatch went and had grabbed a giant, like what looked like a log. But he said it was like really just like a tree, to him, it would have been a tree. But this Sasquatch went over to that other tree and started smacking it, trying to hit it. And he said the whole time you could see like the arm was messed up on the Squatch. It was really messed up. Like its arm was messed up, but it didn't give a crap. It was still using this other smaller tree to hit that thing. And finally the thing fell out and then it just ran through the woods real fast with the Squatch like in pursuit of it. Now, there again, I don't know why This would happen. I don't know why, if these things like why they would attack each other and what that Squatch wanted to do with that creature or what bone it had to pick with that creature, why it attacked that creature. I have no freaking idea. I just know what this guy told me. And he had said, I saw a Sasquatch, 12 years ago, and it walked up. He's like, I sat up. I was with two friends, and we were picking, whatever. And one of them was just like, okay, be very quiet, be very still, and eventually it'll go away. And it turned, and it did. But then he goes, this encounter was like crazy, because he said it was like this thing wanted to kill whatever that thing was. And for whatever reason, he's like, I can only guess. I have no clue why it wanted to end its life. But, getting these stories, a lot of times there really are no answers. You don't know.
It could just be as simple as they just see each other and just in the same area.
Leopards and lions. I don't know. I said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. I've said it many times on other shows too. The rake, if that's what this is, if this is a rake type creature, and I know that the term rake is a creepypasta term, but it is what it is. It has stuck.
Dude, this cryptid that you're describing has a lot of similar things that you would find in rakes. The ability to splat out and morph its body out,
do all these weird things.
The head turning thing sounds like something you see in a rake. The only thing that kind of weirds me out is the tail.
The tail.
That's why I was like, oh.
But even that we've heard of before. But that's not typical. That's more of like a reptilian type thing. Like the tail of this on that reptilian. There was the last creature we talked about with the dog man. That thing had a tail. One of the things that seems to be kind of universal, you hear about Dogman and Bigfoot fighting. You hear about all these different creatures getting into it with one another. But it seems to me like the rake seems to be everybody's
kill on sight. They hate that thing.
They hate that thing. It's like something that when you get stories of them encountering other, even animals, other creatures, it seems like they don't play well with others. And I've said this before, it is like a dangerous way to make a living in Bigfoot / Dogman territory and having to compete with them for whatever, resources, living space, what have you. But this thing does seem to be pretty formidable because that Sasquatch was not able to kill it.
It sounds like a pest that you just can't get rid of, and it's just constantly annoying you. So that's why, it wasn't that surprising to me hearing about this thing, seeing it, and immediately trying to go after it.
Imagine though, what could have happened to this guy. If he kept walking and didn't see it, if that thing attacked him, he would have been toast.
Oh, definitely. I mean, whatever that mucus or slime or whatever it was, invisible acid that was burning this Sasquatch, you can imagine what that do to your skin.
And it bit into his form, a whole chunk of his form. So, you imagine, a Sasquatch is a pretty formidable creature. Typically we hear stories of them just doing some incredible things, dude. And it's like that creature held its own against it. Now, it may not have won, and it did kind of retreat, but it didn't get killed.
No, to be honest, it sounds like it might have won that battle. With how much?
I think it gave some damage to the Squatch, but I mean, it did run.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think these rakes are frontline fighters. I think they're scavengers, ambush predators. Based on everything that you kind of hear, they stay away and then they attack you like sharks do when you don't see them.
Yeah.
But Bigfoot or Dogman, when they see you, they charge at you and they don't care if they're going to try to kill you. They don't care.
When they attack.
Yeah, when they attack. If they're going to try to kill you, they don't care if you see them. But these things, everything tells me that they don't want to be seen. They want to attack you when you don't see them.
Yeah, and ambush predators
That's probably why they're so hated, though, also.
Well, and if you were to think of Bigfoot and Dogman in a physical term, or at least when they're in our reality, they're physical, if they have young, they would probably be prey to that thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And they'd probably kill them, So, certain lions, they hate hyenas because hyenas, if they catch a lion cub, they'll kill it. If they catch each other out in the open, they kill each other, depending on the numbers. And a leopard, same way. Leopards will snatch up a lion cub and go up into a tree where the lions can't get it and kill it. It's just a sad thing. I saw a video the other day of a leopard, unaliving a cheetah. It was a horrible thing. I felt so bad for the cheetahs. They're endangered and everything kills them, but they're at the bottom of the food chain. And when you look at this rake type creature, I imagine that's and I'll tell you another one. Well, I'll let you decide. What do you want to?
I would like to hear that other rake story because it does. But I kind of want to hear a Bigfoot one again, a Bigfoot win. Remember the one we were talking about that it fought something that like came down from the tree?
The tree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another weird thing that the Bigfoot fights.
This one was in Oregon. And I think it was near Salem or Eugene. I got to remember where it was at. And it was like close to a waterfall somewhere. I don't remember. I can't remember exactly but it was in Western Oregon. And I'm trying to remember exactly where it was at. And I always get this one confused with the one near the Columbia River. Okay. I think I know what you're talking about. That. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. If that's the one you're talking about, I'm pretty sure. And correct me if I'm wrong. It was leaning up on a tree and something
like dripped off.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So this one was crazy. We got this one. This one happened in 2007, I believe. And like I said, I don't even have this one in front of me, but I know this one pretty good, like by heart. And I remember going over this one with a couple different people. I might have gone over this one with Barton. And this thing was like leaning up on a tree, and it was all black, and it was just literally like chilling there, and it was like arms crossed, like just sitting there, just hanging out. And these two hikers were walking up the trail or walking out. They were going to a waterfall to check out a waterfall, which is usually pretty like there's people there, but it was kind of cold. So they didn't think there would be anybody out, and they see this Sasquatch that come around the corner, and there's like, dude, that's a freaking a Bigfoot, just right there. And it just turned and it stood, and it kind of acted aggressive toward them. And the next thing you know, there's this black goo or something that it's like trying to shake off of its arm. And then more of it kind of like jumps from the tree. And this is the words they used. Is this the one you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And the guy's name was Clay.
Yeah.
And Clay said that the thing kind of jumped up on its neck. And next thing you know, it was wrapping itself around his head. Yeah. And so this thing and the Squatch, they felt sorry for it because, it was trying to get this black goo, whatever the heck it was, off of it. What they noticed, though, was on that tree was, this is creepy, what looked like an arm with dagger-like fingers hanging off of it. But there should have been like a body attached to the arm. It was just like a puddle. I mean, not a puddle, but like a ball of goo. And they could see what looked like two red eyes inside the ball. Yeah, it was gnarly, dude. And then this thing like reached down and it went into the Squatch's mouth and was like starting to go inside of it. Now, I know you remember the story that we heard about the dog man that was fighting the black panther creature. Yeah. And that was like smoke or something that was going in and out of it. But this black sludge goo, we've heard of this before. We've heard of the jelly, the blob stuff, you know?
I was thinking of like the black shapeshifters, the goo shapeshifters.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then the one that was from the Forbidden City, what was that one from? Was it Thailand? It was the one from Thailand. I know that we got from a friend of ours. He kickboxes. He came to our Ashes Club that night. You were there.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was talking. Yeah. I got to get that story. I got to tell that story eventually. I got that story, but I want him to tell it. He's a coach. He coaches over in Phuket. And I believe it was him that told us that one. And so what was crazy though, was like this creature, like this Bigfoot, it was like killing it. It was going into the Bigfoot. Suffocating it. Yeah, he was killing it. And the Bigfoot was fighting, and when he would try to get part of it off of it, and then it would just like go up on its leg or whatever. And they didn't stick around because this thing started kind of rampaging and thrashing around and freaking out. And they said there was just something so unsettling about it and so terrifying. They just turned around and ran. They didn't know what to do. They couldn't help it. What are you going to do? Run up to a Sasquatch and be like, here, let me help get this demonic goo off of you.
Yeah, especially if that thing is still sitting up there. I wouldn't want to catch its attention.
And then if it eats you too, and what the heck is that? Like, what would do that?
The only thing I can think of is like that black shapeshifter thing that we talked about before, about how it like turned into like it was just this puddle of black goo. Then it kind of like melded around and then turned into something. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I guess that could be it, but like it's so weird and it's such a weird way to attack that like I have no idea. I've never heard of something attacking like that, like dripping itself onto you and like that goo is sentient and able to keep attacking you. Like that's why this one stuck with me, because it creeps me out.
Well, here's a creepy sideline story to this whole thing. And this one happened right here in Austin. It was out in Menchaca, and it was one that I think it was a guy that used to work for us. I think it was Thule. That used to work for us. And I'm pretty sure this is a friend of mine, a friend of ours, whatever. And I remember recording with him, and he had told me, we never did air it, but he told me a terrifying story about living in a haunted house. And I remember we were out there one night, me and him, and Nellie may have been there, she may not have been. I know you weren't there, but we were talking with, it was shift change. I know Scorpion was there and Nelly was there, I think. And we were talking to him, and one of the workers was there, and he was telling this story. He said, when I was a kid, do you remember Jorge? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, it was him. He was the one telling it.
Yeah, I like Jorge.
Yeah, he was a good guy, but he was saying that he saw this black cloud that would float around, and it would go through the fence of their neighbors and go into their yard. And he said that he thought that they were practicing like brujeria, like some sort of something. And specifically, it was like Santeria or something. But they were from like somewhere else, like Brazil or something. And he said the neighbors were there. And one day they killed an animal in their backyard. He could hear it. And he was like, dude, after that, there was this weird like black cloud. And he said that he was babysitting. It was not his place. It was his mother's house, whatever. And he said that him and his wife were there because his mom went on a trip to Barbados. And he said that he was babysitting the dog, or her two dogs, and they went out to use the bathroom, and they saw that black cloud like hovering over one of the dogs, and it came down and enveloped one of the dogs and lifted it up off the ground and began to like choke it, like suffocate it, and it was like swirling around it. And as it began to envelop this dog, which it wasn't a big dog. It was a lab puppy. It wasn't like a huge dog. It wasn't like a massive black cloud either. He said that it began to spiral around it, and it became more solid. And he goes, dude, I witnessed this with my own eyes. He told like 4 of us this story. And I remember it was like right before we finished that site over there at Menchaca. And well, you know what? I don't think Scorp was there. I think Clark was there. I think it might have been Clark was there.
Clark.
He worked it a lot.
Yeah, because he had an area out there.
Yeah, and so I think it might have been him that was there when Jorge was telling that story. But and I don't know if me and Nellie, I don't remember if she was with me or not, but I just remember hearing that story. And then I was going to talk about that when I talked about the black cloud thing that me and Jeff had seen at different times over at the other post we worked at. But it was so weird, and then I just that story got left out, whatever. But that it enveloped that dog, and he went out there, and like, dude, he didn't know what to do. So him and his wife, they're out there trying to grab the dog, but the dog is like bouncing literally off the ground, and this thing is choking it. And so she started screaming. She started throwing holy water on the dog, and there was this quick smoke, and then they said the prayer. They said a couple prayers or whatever, and then it just like went up in the air and then went back to the fence on the other side. And the dog was scared and yelping and freaking out. But when it was happening, it was like choking this dog from the inside to where the dog couldn't make any noise. And he goes, dude, it was the weirdest thing I ever saw in my life. It was because, dude, I've been around this stuff before, like brujeria, He's like, I've seen some weird stuff. He said his grandmother's sister died practicing brujeria, and even visited his grandmother in a dream, talking about she was in hell.
What happens?
Yeah, and so that's what happens. But he said that this was crazy. And so he talked to his grandmother about it, who at that time was still alive. And he said he was in his 20s when this happened. And I guess Jorge's in his 40s probably. And so he said that, dude, it was a weird thing. And his grandmother said, yeah. She's like, that's something that's like been created by a human, which I think we would know maybe as a tulpa. It was trying to get energy from that animal by killing it, because they opened the doorway not only to demons and things like that, but to thought forms. And I think our world is a lot weirder than we could possibly know.
Yeah, I think the spiritual aspect of the spiritual world is something that we have absolutely no idea of, obviously, but it's something that we can't really comprehend with our minds because we're such a physical being. And I think like things like spiritual thought forms and, things like demons and ghosts and stuff, like the way they exist might be in a way that we can't even fathom. And it might just be that when they get here that they need that energy to create those forms. So that black goo ball, whatever it was that was attacking that Bigfoot, it might have been like a demon or something. And
trying to feed on it. Yeah. Feed on its essence, because it would be. And if you buy into the theory that these things are not all flesh and blood, these Bigfoot, it could be a quicker source of energy.
It could be like it's weakened now that it's in its physical form, and it'd be like that. This is my best chance to attack it. So it's just weird. But I think
it's obviously being stalked. I mean, this thing
definitely.
Probably
it sounds like it was sitting up there waiting for it. I mean, I'm guessing that Bigfoot probably sits on that tree all the time. The way it was so
probably
comfortable,
just chilling, just whatever on his favorite tree, and then. Unfortunately, we don't know the rest of the story. We don't know what became of it, what happened.
I mean, I'm kind of thankful because I guarantee that thing was going to attack them next. It sounds like it was just hungry. And that sounds like such a terrifying way to be killed, to be honest. It's just
suffocated and strangled
in this black goo that you have no idea and you can't escape from, because it's like the way it surrounds your head. You're now blind. You can't breathe. You can't see. You're constantly grabbing at it, but all you feel is it going back up your legs.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I don't even want to think about it.
I mean, and I could do whole stories on the black goo.
Mm.
We got the one where the guy in the bathtub in Amarillo.
Yeah.
Where the black goo, this guy had a pretty gnarly, and you know what? We should tell that one on the live stream. I'm going to write that one down.
I think the next story.
I'm going to go back and research that one, the black goo from... Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And that one was in Amarillo. This guy had stayed a night in a hotel, and it basically attacked him in a tub.
I think we should finish off the show with a retelling of the Panther story, in case as you said, some people aren't privy to the live stream, so they would have missed that.
Well, they better go get privy. That's
the reason why you should check it out, because you're going to miss out.
Okay, well, I got enough time to tell that one here, or at least an abbreviated version of it. This one was crazy. It was out of Flagstaff, and like I said before, Flagstaff needs to be quarantined off and just put or maybe it's just us. But I've talked to other researchers, like Weatherly and other people who've gotten weird stories.
It's definitely a hotspot of weirdness.
It is. I've had people tell me some weird stuff about Flagstaff, dude. I just it's such a weird story. This guy was out hiking, and it was over there on Flagstaff's on the other side of the Grand Canyon. It's about 100 miles, I think, or something. I don't know exactly. But he went hiking deep into the woods. He had parked his RV at one of those camps. And now Arizona is Arizona, folks. Everybody's like, oh, it's a big desert. Well, it is. But Flagstaff's like an oasis of trees in that area. And I told this on the live stream, so I'm not going to go into real in depth about it. But suffice it to say, it was a weird encounter. This guy was walking, and he sees what appears to be, and because he never saw it really stand up, he could only judge by it laying down, a 5.5 to 6 foot werewolf, but looked very muscular and very wide. And it was laying on the ground, and it looked like almost like it was swatting at flies or something. And he was like, what is that? And he realized that it was arms. It had arms like a human. And it had the backward bent legs like a werewolf, and there was something attacking it. And he said he noticed like this swirling black smoke or something that was kind of like around this thing. And the next thing you know, he says this black cat, panther-like creature began to materialize on top of this werewolf or dog man, wherever you want to call it. And they were fighting full tilt. And the claws of this werewolf, wolfman, whatever, well, he called it a wolfman. That's basically what he called it. But he said this wolfman looking thing that looked like a werewolf, and it reached up and scratched that panther creature, and it let out a shriek. So it did hurt it. But he said that all that happened was like this smoky, like ash, which we've heard this before, looks like gunpowder or something comes off of it. And he's like, dude, that's all that happened was like this strange, smoky, gunpowdery stuff comes off of this creature. And he hears this like, this thrashing around, screeching, howling. And this werewolf-like, creature was fighting for its life. And then this cat-looking creature kind of looked over at him for a second and then looked back down at what it was doing. So it was aware that he was there, which unnerved him pretty badly. And he said that it took its paw, which kind of elongated and turned into a human-like hand. And the front leg became like an arm. And it was really weird. And he said that he put its hand over the werewolf-looking creature's mouth and was like suffocating it. And then the werewolf-type creature kept fighting and kicking and just yelping and howling. And then the panther thing was shrieking, and they were going back and forth. And eventually, this cat-like creature, whatever, just sort of began to dissipate and like lose. I say lose energy, I guess maybe. Like it began to kind of like just shrink up and disappear. Lose its form, yeah, lose its form. Like it was losing energy or something. And then he just saw this. He took off running. He said he looked over his shoulder as he kind of got to a curve, in the trail, and he saw this wolf-like creature kind of sitting there choking and like putting its hand in its mouth, trying to pull out black, smoky sludge-looking stuff. Now he got back to his camp and he was frantic, and he was just like telling his neighbors that he had met a couple days before, and he said, dude, I saw this crazy thing, whatever, that looked like a werewolf fighting with a black panther. And the lady there, she goes, that's odd. She's like, one of the campers here told us a couple days ago they were walking in the woods and they looked up and they saw this black panther just like sitting up in a tree chilling, looking at them. But it didn't do anything. He just said it was weird looking. And they got kind of scared because they were walking right below it. And they thought, oh, no. But they watched it the whole time and it didn't do anything to them. It just watched them. But for whatever reason, it felt the need to attack this wolf-like creature. I don't know, man. It was such a weird story. And the guy said, he wasn't like he was telling me, like every week he's having another sighting or something, not like an experiencer. He was just like a one-time, thing. And I always, when I interview people, I try to find out if there's anything else that may have happened to this person, because maybe they're able to see, like with Ojo, like they have the eye, they can see things, And maybe this guy did, because, he's not what I would call an experiencer, but he did say that he had he saw a full-bodied apparition of his grandmother's or of his grandfather's friend after he had died. There was an old guy that used to come to his house all the time when he was a kid, and he would always be out there whittling and talking to his grandpa. Shortly after the funeral, after he died, he was dreaming, and he woke up and he saw the guy standing at the foot of his bed, and he was just smiling, and then he just walked out of his room, and he goes, I saw with my own eyes, like clear as day. And that was his grandfather's best friend. So I thought that may be pertinent only because, like, some people see these things, they see these creatures and they see these ghosts and stuff because they have like a version of the eye. Mm-hmm. Like I say, ojo dotado, the gift.
Well, I was thinking too that sometimes, just seeing it once marks you. Like I said on a live stream, when you stare at the abyss, sometimes the abyss stares back.
Stares back, and then you're able to see it.
Yep.
Yep. But anyway, folks, that's a bunch of intriguing, weird stuff. Food for thought. Be sure and like and
fighting
describe
each other. I mean, it's definitely a weird thing. It was an exciting show because, you know, like Wolf had said, we've been collecting a couple of these stories for a while now,
and we got more.
Yeah,
we got enough for a whole nother show, in which we'll eventually release. But don't forget to tune in every Tuesday. We drop another podcast episode, which goes to YouTube, Spotify, and all the other platforms. I'm sorry, folks. I had to take a cough drop. My throat's a little scratchy. But yeah, just be sure and tell your friends and tell everybody about our show. And check out the live streams, because the live streams, you get a lot of information.
And come meet us at the